Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today, I want to guide you through a perspective shift, one that could deeply change how you view success, money, and life. What we'll explore isn't just a popular book, it's a set of lessons that have influenced millions, including myself. We are talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the most influential books ever written about achieving financial freedom. Imagine being a child growing up, watching the adults in your life. One tells you to study hard, get a stable job, and save money. Another encourages you to understand how money works, to make it work for you, and to build wealth. These are two completely different approaches to life. This was exactly the situation for Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He had two father figures, his biological father, whom he called his poor dad, and his best friend's father, whom he called his rich dad. Poor Dad was well educated and had a respectable job as a teacher. He believed success came from hard work, good grades, and climbing the career ladder. But despite his qualifications, he lived paycheck to paycheck and avoided conversations about money. On the other hand, Rich Dad didn't have a college degree or a government job, but he understood money. He owned businesses, made smart investments, and believed that financial education was more important than academic success. He would often say, "Don't work for money, make money work for you." Imagine how confusing it must have been for young Robert, caught between two very different philosophies. Poor Dad said, "Get a job for security," while Rich Dad said, "Create jobs." Poor Dad claimed, "Money is the root of all evil," whereas Rich Dad said, "The lack of money is the root of all evil." Although Robert loved and respected both men, he started noticing that Poor Dad, despite being intelligent, constantly worried about money. Rich Dad, though less educated, was confident and calm about his finances. One day, Robert asked Rich Dad why he seemed so secure about money. Rich Dad smiled and said, "Because I understand how money works. Most people work hard for money, but never learn how to make it work for them." That simple statement changed everything for Robert. It sparked his curiosity and led him to learn from Rich Dad, adopting a completely different way of thinking about wealth. Let's pause here. Isn't this the same dilemma many of us face? We grow up being told to go to school, get a good job, and save for retirement. But how often are we taught how to manage money, how to invest, or how to build wealth? Your attitude toward money shapes your entire financial future. If you see money as something evil or scary, you'll likely struggle with it. But if you see it as a tool, something you can learn about and control, then you open the door to opportunities and freedom. Think about it. If you were faced with two paths, one leading to financial struggle and the other to financial independence, wouldn't you want to know how to choose the right one? That's exactly what Robert was discovering. One day, Rich Dad told him something he never forgot: the rich don't work for money. Robert was confused. Isn't that why everyone works, for money? But Rich Dad explained, no. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them. Rich Dad described the rat race, a cycle many people are trapped in. You go to school, work hard, get a job, and start earning. Then you buy a house, a car, and other things that come with bills, loans, and taxes. To keep up, you work even harder. But the more you earn, the more you spend. The cycle never ends. He said most people believe they are working for financial security, but in reality, they are working for their employer, the government, and the bank. He gave an example of a man named John. John earns $3,000 a month. After a raise, he starts earning $4,000. Instead of saving or investing, he upgrades his lifestyle, buys a better car or a larger home. His expenses increase with his income. Now he has to work even harder to maintain this lifestyle. This cycle keeps him trapped. Robert realized this was exactly what his poor dad was doing. Then Rich Dad asked Robert if he knew what financial freedom meant. When Robert said no, Rich Dad explained, "Financial freedom is when your investments or assets generate enough income to cover your expenses. At that point, you don't need to work unless you choose to, your money works for you." He stressed that being rich isn't about having a high-paying job. Even someone earning a lot can be broke if their expenses are too high. True wealth comes from owning assets that generate income, not just from having a large salary. Rich Dad taught Robert the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket, even when you're not working. A liability takes money out. For instance, if someone saves $10,000 and buys a car, it starts losing value and comes with ongoing costs like fuel, maintenance, and insurance. That's a liability. But if another person uses that same $10,000 to buy a small piece of property and rents it out for $200 a month, that becomes an asset. It generates income and may even increase in value over time. Robert was stunned. He realized that most people mistakenly see liabilities like houses, cars, or luxury items as signs of wealth, when in reality, they drain money instead of generating it. Rich Dad explained that wealthy people focus on acquiring assets first, businesses, real estate, stocks, or even investing in their own skills through education. Once those assets are generating enough income, then they can enjoy luxuries without financial stress. To drive the point home, Rich Dad gave another example. Two families earn $5,000 a month. Family A spends all their money on rent, food, and entertainment, ending each month with nothing left. Family B, on the other hand, lives on $4,000 and invests the remaining $1,000. Over time, these investments start paying off. Maybe they earn $500 a month in dividends. Eventually, that passive income grows enough to cover all their expenses. Family B achieves financial freedom, while Family A remains stuck in the rat race. At this point, Robert truly began to understand, it's not about how much you make, but how well you manage what you have. Rich Dad shared one last insight, a mindset shift. Most people say, "I can't afford it," which shuts down creative thinking. But the wealthy ask, "How can I afford it?" This simple question opens up possibilities and solutions. That small change in mindset makes a world of difference. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," shift your mindset and ask yourself how you could afford it. Write down 3 possible solutions. Maybe you can reduce unnecessary expenses, start a side hustle, or learn a high-income skill. This kind of thinking trains your brain to operate like the wealthy, who focus on possibilities instead of limitations. Robert, still unsure about investing, once asked Rich Dad, "What if I lose money?" Rich Dad smiled and said, "That's the difference between the rich and the poor. Poor people fear losing money and avoid risks, while the rich know that failure is part of the learning process. Mistakes aren't the end, they are lessons that push you forward." To help Robert build wealth even with limited funds, Rich Dad gave him a plan. First, track all your expenses for a month to identify what can be cut. Second, start small, invest in simple things like stocks or interest-bearing savings. Third, make learning about money a daily habit through books, seminars, or mentors. Fourth, focus on acquiring income-generating assets like rental property or side businesses before buying luxuries. Fifth, reinvest any profits to grow your wealth faster instead of spending them. As Robert followed these steps, his thinking began to shift. He stopped seeing money as something to spend and started viewing it as a tool to build more. He actively sought opportunities and, slowly but surely, transitioned from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance. Rich Dad then taught him a powerful lesson: to be wealthy, you must learn to control your emotions. Robert was puzzled, so Rich Dad explained that emotions like fear and greed drive most people's poor financial decisions. Fear keeps people stuck in jobs they dislike because they are afraid they won't be able to pay their bills. Greed convinces people that expensive items, a new car or a large house, will bring happiness, but instead they bring more stress and debt. True happiness, Rich Dad said, comes from freedom, the freedom to do what you love, spend time with loved ones, and live on your own terms. And that freedom comes from building assets, not spending on things you don't need. Knowledge, Rich Dad stressed, is key to overcoming emotional reactions around money. Most people fear money because they don't understand it. They avoid investing, overpay in taxes, and never learn how to grow wealth. He encouraged Robert to learn about 3 areas: investments like stocks and real estate, how taxes work and how the wealthy reduce theirs legally, and market strategies, such as knowing when to buy and sell. The more knowledge you have, the less fear you feel. Education gives you power. Another critical mindset shift Rich Dad taught was to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an investor. If someone earns $1,000, a consumer spends it on entertainment or gadgets. But an investor asks, how can I use this to make more money? Maybe by buying stocks, taking a course, or starting a small business. Over time, investors grow their money, while consumers lose theirs. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to always look at the world through the lens of ownership. Instead of just walking past stores, he suggested asking questions like, how could I own a business like this? Or what would it take to make this succeed? This habit of thinking like an owner opened Robert's eyes to new possibilities, like buying an old house to rent out or starting an online venture. Despite his growth, Robert faced doubt and criticism. People told him he was too young, or that investing was too risky. Even his poor dad advised him to focus on a safe career. But Rich Dad reminded him that people often criticize what they don't understand. They speak from their own fears. If you listen to them, you'll stay stuck like them. Instead, surround yourself with people who believe in growth and success. Rich Dad also emphasized starting small. He told a story of a young woman who began investing with just $50. Rather than waiting to have more, she started with what she had, and her confidence grew alongside her investments. Success, he said, is built step by step. Daily habits are crucial. Rich Dad explained that your financial future depends on what you do consistently. Saving and investing regularly, even in small amounts, builds wealth over time, while spending everything keeps you stuck. He recommended 2 habits. First, always pay yourself first by setting aside savings or investment money before bills. Second, track your progress to stay motivated. However, he warned against impatience. Many give up when they don't see fast results, expecting instant success. But wealth is like growing a tree. You plant the seed, nurture it, and wait. It takes time, effort, and consistency. Lastly, Rich Dad told Robert that the most important truth about building wealth is this: success isn't about luck or talent. It's about mindset, discipline, and action. Many people dream of being rich, but only a few take the steps to make it happen. Robert left that day deeply inspired, committed to breaking out of the rat race, building real assets, and creating a life of freedom on his own terms. Many people delay taking action, waiting for the perfect time, the ideal opportunity, or the right idea. But the truth is, there is no perfect time. The best time to start is now. Rich Dad illustrated this with a story about 2 friends. One said, "I'll start saving and investing when I earn more money." The other started small, saving just $10 a week. A decade later, the second friend had built substantial wealth, while the first was still waiting. Rich Dad explained that opportunities are everywhere, but only those who take action benefit from them. You don't need to be fully ready, you need to begin with what you have. He also emphasized that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of the journey. Every successful person has failed many times. He told Robert about a businessman who failed in his first 5 ventures. People mocked him and called him foolish. But he didn't give up, and on his 6th attempt, he created a thriving business that transformed his life. Rich Dad asked, "Do you think he would have succeeded if he stopped after his first failure?" Self-discipline, Rich Dad said, is essential to financial freedom. Spending money is easy, but it takes real discipline to save and invest it. He urged Robert to always pay himself first, set aside a portion of income for savings or investments before paying bills or other expenses. This habit not only strengthens discipline, but also forces creativity and resourcefulness with the remaining funds. That's how wealth is built, not just by income, but by managing it wisely. Rich Dad observed that many people let their doubts hold them back. He told Robert, "Your thoughts shape your reality. If you focus on your fears, you'll find reasons to fail. But if you focus on your dreams, you'll discover ways to succeed." As their lessons drew to a close, Rich Dad shared one final and surprising insight. The wealthiest people are often those who give back. This puzzled Robert at first, so Rich Dad explained, giving creates value. Whether it's mentoring someone, sharing your knowledge, or supporting a cause, giving enriches both the giver and the receiver. It leads to fulfillment and often opens unexpected doors. He shared the story of a wealthy man who launched a scholarship program for underprivileged students. This generous act changed many lives, but it also brought the man recognition, fulfillment, and new business opportunities. Generosity, Rich Dad said, multiplies success. His final piece of advice was simple yet profound: the moment you stop learning, you stop growing. Years later, Robert reflected on these teachings and realized how deeply they had changed him. He had built financial wealth, but more importantly, he gained freedom, confidence, and the ability to positively impact others. His message to others was clear: no matter where you start, you have the power to shape your future. What matters most is not your current situation, but your mindset and your willingness to act. Wealth isn't just about money, it's about building a life where you can pursue your passions, support others, and live without regret. So as you reach the end of this story, remember, your journey to financial freedom starts today. Start small. Be consistent. Learn from your failures. Dream big. And never give up. Because the only real limit to your success is the one you place on yourself. The world is full of opportunities. All it takes is one step. Your time is now. Make it count. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more heart-touching, real-life inspired tales, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Your support means the world, and I'll see you in the next one.